Hey, before we get to today's video, we'd like to welcome this week's subscribers, Lawana Jenkins, Sherry Webster, and Connie Sills. Welcome to our channel. We hope you enjoy. So let's get to the video. Hey folks, welcome back to Mark Kelly Farm. Kind of a weird, overcast, sunshine, not sunshine, doesn't know what it wants to do kind of day. But it got dry enough to get back out here in the garden and get the rest of my tomatoes in. We had planted all of the indeterminate tomatoes, and then we got a good amount of rain, and then it got too muddy to be out here, and I still had to get all my determinate tomatoes in. But we got that done today, and I wanted to show you a system that we're using to trellis those up. These short cages here are all of our indeterminate tomatoes, and we've wrapped those in the pallet plastic, stuff they use to wrap pallets in to keep the pallets together. They sell it at any hardware store. Comes in a little roll with handle on it. It's pretty convenient. The tops are all open because you don't want to close those up. It'll get way too hot in there for your tomatoes. But we got 36 indeterminate tomatoes, and we have, I believe, 29 determinate, because I left some room down on the end to put some peppers down there. But without further ado, let me introduce you to the Nebraska Weave. The reason we call it the Nebraska Weave is we get crazy amounts of wind out here, and that's the reason for this plastic that you see on these cages. And that keeps the wind from blowing these young plants over and breaking them off. We had a couple break off over here the other day before we got the cages on. The wind was blowing so hard it just snapped them. So that's why we put the plastic on the bottom of these cages. And this is all the trellising we're going to do for these determinate tomatoes because they don't get as big. This row over here is going to have cattle panels suspended up a couple feet because they get a lot taller, and then we're going to prune most of those to one stem to try to get some bigger fruit out of them. So let's look at this. You can see the cages, kind of a hodgepodge of cages because I didn't have enough, so I had to make some. One mistake I made that maybe I'll keep you from making: this is good wire because it's got big holes in it that you can reach through and pick tomatoes. However, it's not welded wire. And I like the welded wire because when we cut the tops or the bottoms off, it leaves a good kind of a stake that you can shove into the ground. With this type of wire here, at every junction, that wire kind of moves back and forth. It's twisted around every single place. So if you cut it here, this wire moves around this bottom or the next piece down here. So let me go show you some welded wire. It's the kind they use for concrete reinforcement. It's much better. So this stuff here is all welded wire. So when you cut the bottom ring off, you have some good stakes to poke down into the ground and hold these things. But that's the cages. Now let's get into this Nebraska Weave we got going on here. What we did is we put a T-post every 4 cages. And that's about as far as you want to go. Otherwise it gets to be too long and it's not as sturdy. And then after we put the T-post in every 4 cages, we come through and put this middle string in. And when I go through the cages, I try to be on one side of the wire on one side and then the other side of the wire on the other side of the cage. So it's got stability both ways. So you stretch that string. It's just very heavy duty twine for trellising tomatoes and tying up stuff. And you run that one all the way down through the middle. Well, then you come back and do a weave around the cages. So every other cage you go around and get to the end, you come back, and when you get to every stake, make sure that you do a few wraps because you don't want the twine moving around. So it's at least secured every 4 cages. So you get your weave going, come all the way back twisting around this every time you come by. And this is what you end up with around your cages. And you can see this is real sturdy. This isn't going anywhere. The wind comes up, we get a 50-mile-an-hour wind, these cages will still be standing. And anybody that grows tomatoes knows it's hard to keep those cages up. Sometimes you got to stake them, each individual cage, into the ground if you don't have them real close together like this. But that's how you do the Nebraska Weave. It's kind of a version of the Florida Weave, but you're not weaving the plant itself, you're weaving the cage. And the reason I don't like the Florida Weave, that I don't think would work out here in Nebraska, is it's going to leave those plants subjected a lot more to the wind, whereas this cage will provide a lot of support. As the plants grow, we'll just make sure that the stems of the plant stay inside the cage and grow up inside the cage. And after these plants get good and sturdy, we'll pull this plastic off the bottom. Same way with those over there. But like I said, those over there are going to be tied to that cattle panel single stem, so we'll see if the wind affects those too much. We may have to come back next year and do something similar to this, just taller, or keep the tomatoes pruned down to where they don't get so tall. But that last bit of moisture we got's really got the garden jumped up. All my beans are up down here that you see. All the corn came up. The onions are doing really well. You can see I got the strip tape running because we only got about a ½ inch out of that last storm. But all my chard's up. I got turnips, radishes, lettuce, all the potatoes coming up. Really going gangbusters out here. But that's the Nebraska Weave. Give it a try. Makes things real sturdy. And remember, get the welded wire if you're going to make cages. Works much better. So little tricks of the trade. If you live in a windy area, it might be something that you want to try, something that's going to work for you. So come back and see us next time on Mark Kelly Farm. We love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy.